Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I am Sharon Green Middleton, Vice President of the City Council, Representative for the 6th District, and Chairperson for the Economic and Community Development Committee. This afternoon, we will hear the following bills. Bill number 23-0408, zoning conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 2 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district, variances 1046 Brantley Avenue, and also 23-0425, improving safety and habitability in supportive and other residential housing. In attendance today, we have John, member of the committees, John Bullock, 9th District. Thank you, Madam Chair. Odette Ramos of the 14th District. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Robert Stokes of the 12th District, and Mark Conway of the 4th District. Thank you, Madam Chair. Also representatives of the President's Office, we have Dwayne Adams, Fiscal and Budget Analyst, and also Tiffany Macklin, Deputy Director for Legislation. And representatives of the Mayor's Office, we have Nina Thimelis, Director for Governmental Relations. And let's begin, and we're starting again with Bill number 23-0408, zoning conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 2 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district, variances 1046 Brantley Avenue, for the purpose of permitting, subject to certain conditions, the conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 2 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district on the property known as 1046 Brantley Avenue, Block 0115, Lot 071, as outlined in red on the accompanying plat, and granting variances from certain bulk regulations, lot area size, and off-street parking requirements, and providing for a special effective date. This bill was introduced on June 26, 2023. The bill was sponsored by Councilmember Bullock. Councilmember Bullock, do you have some comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Really straightforward bill. Obviously, as you know, there have been a lot of interest in Harlem Park in terms of providing housing options, affordable ones at that. And so the applicant, Mr. Anderson, has reached out to our office as well as the Harlem Park Neighborhood Council and has gotten their support. So again, would appreciate a favorable disposition today. So thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move to agency reports, and we'll hear from the City Solicitor's Office first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Hillary Ruley from the Law Department. We approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you. You can switch that over. You can just do a switch in case you need to speak again. Thank you, Hillary. The BMZA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nina Thimelis with the Mayor's Office of Government Relations. On behalf of the BMZA, they defer to the report and recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. And the Planning Commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Eric Tiso here for the Planning Commission and in for my colleague Martin French, who's out of the office today. This bill was presented to the Planning Commission at their meeting of August 31st and was recommended favorably. All of the requirements for the variances are outlined in more detail in our report. Long story short, it's relatively speaking a larger structure on a smaller lot, which is why the need for variances, but we do recommend approval.
Thank you. Any questions to the Planning Department from the committee? Hearing none. Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Stephanie Murdoch, Director of Legislative Services for DHCD. We stand by our bill report, which is favorable.
Thank you. Transportation.
Madam Chair, Liam Davis, Baltimore City Department of Transportation. We stand by our bill report, which is no objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Fire Department.
Nina Thimelis with the Mayor's Office. On behalf of the Fire Department, they have no objection to this legislation.
Thank you. Baltimore Development Corporation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Micah Fetz, representing the Baltimore Development Corporation. The BDC respectfully takes no objection to this council bill's passage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Parking Authority?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christmas Age from the Parking Authority. We stand by our bill report, which is no objection.
Thank you. And any comments from the committee at this point? If not, we'll start with public testimony. Do we have any in person? No one signed up. No one signed up for in person. Checking.
Is here, Mr. Anderson.
We do have the applicant here. Would you like to say, if you recognize yourself, you want to come up to the podium and just, anything you'd like to say about the project, please do. Push that button on the right so it turn red. Yes, you're on.
I don't have too much to say. I do want to thank you.
You can say your name and.
Oh,
who
I'm
you
sorry.
are.
My name is
That's okay.
Ronald Anderson. I am the applicant. You guys were very helpful in helping me with another project across the street. Thank you very much. I look forward to doing this project. I have a lot of ties to Harlem Park, so I'm looking forward to doing another project there to help bring folks there and just make the community better. So I thank you for all your time and efforts.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it, thank you. And there's no online, any phone callers? And no phone callers. Is there a motion to move the bill? Favorable? So moved. So moved by Ramos, second by Conway. Chair Middleton, yes. Bullock? Yes. Is a yes. Conway? Yes. Is a yes. Dorsey, absent. Glover, absent. Ramos? Yes. Is a yes. And Stokes? Yes. Is a yes. This bill will move favorable, second reader at the next council meeting. Next, the committee will hear Bill Number 23-0425, zoning, improving safety and habitability in supportive and other residential housing for the purpose of defining the term supportive housing facility in the Baltimore City Building Code, requiring a permit before any person may transfer ownership or operation of certain property in certain circumstances, updating use and occupancy classifications, and categorizing congregate living facilities as rental dwellings and requiring their licensing. This bill was introduced on September 18th, 2023, and the bill sponsor is Councilmember Ramos. Sponsor comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. This bill is the result of a little over 2 years of work by my office, the Law Department, and DHCD. The idea here is to look, and I sent you my testimony this morning, is to look at the challenges that we're facing relative to group homes. And the idea here is to make sure that people who are seeking help in these facilities are living in decent conditions. Right now, we are seeing, at least in my district and in conversations with other colleagues and you all, that is true in other parts of the city as well. So what this bill basically does is it creates a new class of housing called supportive housing, not to be confused with permanent supportive housing, which is very different. This is called supportive housing, which is basically a group home setting that's not monitored by any sort of medical facility or anything like that. And it could be treatment, it could be other reasons for the group home that has a reasonable accommodation. And that we're creating that in the building code and just ensuring that these properties are also properly licensed as rentals, as well as up to building code standards. We also do a couple of corrections of other definitions of congregate living in here. It is not a bill that says that group homes can't be in certain places. That's not what we're doing here. We're simply saying that we want residents who are seeking assistance in these houses are able to live in good conditions, just like everybody else. So that's the gist of the bill. There is one amendment that the Planning Commission recommended, and it just literally fixed a typo from our OUR to OR. So that is a friendly amendment before you, and I'm grateful for the committee support and happy to take any questions. Also, the Law Department is here and DHCD is here to also answer any questions you might have as well, since we worked on that together. Thank you.
Thank you. The committee will now hear from the agencies, City Solicitor's Office.
Madam Chair, it's Hillary Ruley on behalf of the Law Department. We stand by our bill report and approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Parking Authority.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christmas Age from the Parking Authority. We stand by our bill report, which is in support, favorable.
Thank you. And the Planning Commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Eric Tiso for the Planning Commission. The commission heard this just this past Thursday and recommend approval with that one technical amendment.
Okay. Could you just explain a little bit more about this particular bill? I know that the sponsor kind of gave a definition, but if there are some particular points that you want to really emphasize.
Sure. I'm not sure how much more I can add to it. Okay. From our perspective, it's going to be invisible. It's not really a direct planning impact. The bill mentions the zoning code, but doesn't touch the zoning code because it just pulls in definitions for consistency, incorporating those by reference. Outside of that, it's going to be more of a permitting concern, so I would defer to housing for any real impacts there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any questions to planning? Councilmember Stokes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, Councilman Odette had mentioned the permit process for this. Mm-hmm. We all hear from our constituents about rooming houses, or whatever you want to call them. But my question is, once they're required to have a permit, is that changing how they can now still have those particular, because the way I'm seeing is now, you get a permit, but it haven't changed what the problem is right now about people just moving into communities and have these, I don't know, call them rooming houses, but 4 or 5 more people that are not related. So if they getting a permit, is that changing? Is the community still gonna have some input? Because if you only getting a permit, they just getting a permit. They still, by right, am I right, housing? Can somebody answer that question? Even if you get a permit, there's the community don't have no say-so in saying we don't want that. So do they still have by right that they can still have that in different communities?
Yep. Jason Hessler, Deputy Commissioner for Baltimore City Department Housing Community Development. You're correct, Councilman. This bill doesn't restrict in any way where uses of this type can go. What it is doing is making sure that any property that is being used in that fashion is safe for the occupants in that property.
And Madam Chair, if I could just add.
Yes.
That we actually cannot restrict the group homes from occurring in communities because of fair housing and the ADA. So we were very careful in this particular piece of legislation to focus on the quality of the building and making sure clients are living in decent conditions and not the zoning code or any restrictions.
And it does draw attention to that that government is paying attention to these properties, and it's more supporting really all sides, because I think all of us get constituent calls on a property that has kind of snuck up in a neighborhood and they didn't come to a community meeting or didn't share anything, and then when we check into it, it's one of these types of homes which they really didn't have to do anything with. So, does that help explain? Okay. Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is still like wrapping my head around it, how it works, how this is going to help ensure that folks have adequate, safe, and proper care in any of these locations. I sort of look at this potentially, and let me know, housing, if this is the wrong way to look at this. I sort of look at this as similar to permits required for rental properties. You have to register your rental property as a rental, and in doing so, you have to make sure it has lead abatement and any other number of safety factors in order for you to legally rent that out in the city of Baltimore. I think this would do something similar. Is that a fair assessment?
In a lot of cases, these properties would still be subject to the rental licensing, and it does clarify that in this bill, because that was a bit of a gray area in some interpretations. So it does do that, but what it also does, the R4 classification puts the property at a different standard for what's required in the property as far as safety precautions. It's just a different occupancy level. Not to be confused at all with the zoning code, which is residential 4. That is something very different. Unfortunately, the building code and the zoning code use similar terminology at times that can confuse people. But every structure has a occupancy classification. And so this is clarifying, and it's not really a change of law, because this is how we would have classified these properties and have been classifying these properties in the past. It's just really clarifying it that these types of uses, when you have this number of people in a property, you need to comply under the building, fire, and related codes as an R4 occupancy, which is a little bit stricter than an R3 or R2 or R1.
So maybe it might help to give a concrete example of how this may or may not play out, and please let me know again if this is a wrong way to think about it. Ingress, egress. Let's say we have a row home that is being used as a halfway house, group home, or otherwise, and they're using all parts of that home to house individuals, and also potentially the basement. One of the major considerations for whether or not the basement can be used as a sort of residential unit is the egress window, whether or not you have adequate access to get out in the case of an emergency. So in a case like that, a permit and whether or not that particular portion of the house could be used for, for these services, that would be determined by those kind of considerations and making sure that folks who have whatever additional need, assisted living need, have the ability to get in and out of that home. That home was intended as a single-family home, but it's being used to house multiple individuals that have an immediate need. But we want to make sure that those folks are safe in the case of an emergency or otherwise. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yes, Councilman, that would be a fair way to look at it, without any specifics to a particular type of house or size of a house, because that kind of gets beyond where I start turning to the engineers and the planners and other people to do the calculations. But that's exactly what it is this house, in the way it's being used, going to be safe for the occupants? Are they going to be able to escape in the case of an emergency, know their way out?
And does this at all have any impact on the number of people that can reside within a unit or a home?
Potentially, based on the size of the home, it could, yes.
But that's already in code.
Yeah, it's not a change in the code. I mean, you need certain amount of space in bedrooms for occupants.
Councilman Stokes, before we get back to you, let me just get through the announcement of whether the report is favorable or not, and I want to.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Stephanie Murdoch for Baltimore City DHCD, and you've already heard from Deputy Commissioner Hessler to my left. As the sponsor mentioned, we have worked together extensively with herself and the law department as well as the administration on this bill to get it to where it is today. And I think it really helps to coordinate, conform, and clarify the work that we're already doing in the code. And it's all around ensuring the life and safety standards are applied equally throughout the city to all non-owner occupied properties that are being rented out, whether they're receiving services or not, really. So we stand by our bill report in support, and we are available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. And BDC?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Micah Fetz for the Baltimore Development Corporation. We stand by our report, and our position is no objection to the passage of the bill.
And BMZA?
Madam Chair, Nina Thumlos with the Mayor's Office of Government Relations. The BMZA stands by its report, and as a quasi-judicial agency, they will not be providing a report or comment for this legislation.
Okay. And lastly, Transportation?
Madam Chair, Liam Davis, Baltimore City DOT. We stand by our bill report, which is no objection.
And then we'll come back to Councilman Stokes.
So my question is for Deputy Commissioner. We already have rental license, right? We already have that. Who monitors that? You don't even have enough staff to make sure that people are registered properly. Am I right? I know it's yes, because I hear it all the time. We don't have enough people, and you said it. My other question is, if we now going to require a permit for that, isn't it another layer for y'all to add to it? Y'all can't even make sure everybody who have rental license have rental license. You can't even monitor that, because the only way you know it, unless the council people find out that some people don't have rental license. My concern is we put a permit on these group homes to add another layer to code enforcement. Code enforcement, you cover code enforcement, Eric Booker, am I correct? So if somebody don't have a rental license or they have group homes, normally the constituent will call who? Code enforcement. So now if we put a permit on the group homes, what's the difference? They get a permit, they don't get a permit. They don't get a rental license. But the only way we'll find out if we call code enforcement. Am I correct? Isn't that the process? My question is, who's going to monitor this to making sure they have a permit for group homes, and you can't even monitor rental license right now?
Well,
can somebody explain
I
that?
just wanted to jump in really quick with one thing, not to interrupt Deputy Commissioner, but one point of clarification.
Recognize yourself.
Sorry, Stephen Salisbury from the Law Department. One other point to clarify is that by having to get the rental license in the first place, that's going to require an inspection. So you're already sort of, I think what part of what this bill was trying to do is address a loophole that a lot of these properties were falling into, where they were never getting the inspection in the first place, they were never getting the rental license, they were never going through a lot of these processes to make sure that the housing was safe and habitable. So again, I understand it probably does not go as far as a lot of folks would have wanted, but that's just one point that I wanted to clarify. And I'll let Deputy Commissioner answer any
and
other
it's going
questions.
to catch certain things like when people transfer ownership.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna add this to some more work for housing about catching stuff. Again, I'm gonna say it again. You can't even catch the people that don't have rental license. Y'all don't have enough inspectors to do that. You don't have enough. If the community didn't call y'all, if the council people didn't call y'all, y'all wouldn't even know who don't have a rental license, because you don't have enough inspectors to cover the whole city. And we know that. Am I right, Deputy
Jason,
Commissioner?
did you want to respond?
Yes. In regards to the rental licenses, we do enforcement around rental licenses. We issue citations for not being registered. We revoke rental licenses where we found that they were issued with false information, or if there's outstanding violations that aren't abated. Our process on that, we don't go door to door looking for whether or not a property is a rental and issuing rental licenses. We do it more either complaint-based or proactive in relation to any kind of request for an investigation on a property. So anytime a property comes across an inspector or investigator's desk that for whatever kind of complaint, if it is found that it is a rental property and should be licensed, or if it's found to be a non-owner occupied property that should be registered, we would then do that investigation and issue the citation. In regards to this particular bill, in the question really of capacity, we're already issuing use permits on these types of buildings. I don't know that the changes in this bill are going to greatly increase that workload. We do several thousand use permits a year, and for these types of buildings, it would be a fire inspection and a building inspection and the processing of the permit. And we, like I said, when buildings come across and people currently are saying that they're going to use it in this fashion, they're being picked up as a different classification of use, and they're getting those inspections already. So it really is just clarifying what we're already doing.
I know that I have communities in Northwest Baltimore, extremely large houses that some have been empty for a while because they're so big. But the communities are, they pay attention, and we're talking about areas like Garwin Oaks, Callaway, all Dorchester, where those big homes are, and very supportive community associations that pay attention, but they don't get information. And this, to me, is an added extra piece of information so they know what's going on. And it's kind of really helping the housing department in a sense.
Madam Chair, I just have a question for Deputy Commissioner.
Yes, go ahead.
What happens when the group homes do not have a license? Do you shut them down?
If they were operating without a use permit, then they would get a violation notice. They could ultimately be shut down, but they would get a violation notice and a citation for operating without a use permit, similar to working without a permit. And if additional enforcement was needed, we could follow up additional citations, or we could take them to district court.
So my question, when you say shut them down, are you going to evict them? Because you can't put them out the house. It was a group home, right?
That would not be our first course of action. That would be an extreme measure. And
could you explain what the extreme measure is?
Can I just, and I'm sorry not to interrupt, but again, just to clarify, this is really about protecting the individuals in the home as opposed to the operators, which is I think what you're talking about.
That's right.
And another point to make with the rental license, the operators, if they don't have a rental license, they can't evict anybody. So their business model is going to be pretty screwed up if they're not able to actually enforce any agreement with the individuals that are living in the home. So this is really more focusing on the operators than on the residents, and increasing the requirements and the expectations for the people that operate these businesses. And we're doing so in a way to protect the individuals that are living there. So we're talking about eviction. It actually would behoove the operators they're going to want to get the rental license, because that's going to be sort of essential to the to what they're the operations they're running out of the home to begin with.
Yeah, and what I was going to finish saying there was, we don't evict people. We do execute vacates on properties in extreme situations where the property is not safe to remain in. So it's an extreme situation. We would take enforcement action against the owner or operator to get them into compliance.
And I do want to recognize Councilman Dorsey of the 3rd District, member of the committee. We'll now move on to public testimony. And we have no in-person testimony, so we're now going to check online and also check on any phone callers. And we have none. Now, I know there was an amendment on the floor.
Yes, Madam Chair, the amendment I sent around this morning, and I think it's in your packet. It's just correcting a typo,
Okay.
misspelling.
Is there a motion to recommend the amendment favorable?
So moved.
So moved by Ramos, second by Conway. For the amendment, Chair Middleton, yes. Bullock? Yes. Yes. Conway? Yes. Dorsey? Yes. Glover, absent. Ramos?
Yes.
Yes. And Stokes is a yes. Is there a motion to recommend the bill favorable?
So moved.
So moved by Ramos, second by Conway. Chair Middleton, yes. Bullock? Yes. Yes. Conway? Yes. Yes. Dorsey is a yes. Glover, absent. Ramos is a yes. Stokes is a yes. And thank you. And this bill will also be moved to second reader at the next council meeting. Thank you.